On the night of Friday, October 23, 2015, 18-year-old Ebby Steppach attended a party in Little Rock, Arkansas. The next evening, she reached out to her stepfather, texting that she had been sexually assaulted at the party and asked if he would accompany her to the police. He agreed, but that was the last time anyone heard from her. Calls and texts from her family went unanswered until the following afternoon, when Ebby called her brother. Disoriented, she believed she was outside his house, though she wasn't. Her family immediately reported her missing, and a desperate search began. But nothing could prepare them for what came next. Later that same day, Ebby's car was found abandoned at a local park. The keys still in the ignition, her personal items, including her phone, makeup, and contact lenses, everything was still there, but there was no sign of Ebby, as if she had vanished into thin air. What happened to Ebby? Was it a tragic coincidence, or is there a much darker story hiding beneath the surface? Keep watching, because the details of Ebby's disappearance are more chilling than you could imagine. And the twist? It will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about this case. A mystery that's haunted her family for years. And the truth? It's still buried in the shadows. Before I begin, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comment below. I will like to know how far this story is going. Ebby Steppach was a typical 18-year-old, full of life, laughter, and ambition. She was a young woman standing on the edge of adulthood, eager to embrace the future. Like many teenagers, she had dreams and plans for the years ahead. Hopes of building a career, experiencing the world, and living a life full of possibility. Those who knew her would describe her as energetic, full of spirit, and always willing to lend a hand. She was someone you could rely on, someone who made people smile just by walking into the room. But behind that bright smile, Ebby was carrying a heavy burden, a secret she hadn't yet been able to share with the world. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Ebby confided in her stepfather, revealing something that would change her life forever. She told him she had been sexually assaulted at a party, an event that would shatter her world. What seemed like a normal part of growing up was in reality a traumatic experience that left Ebby devastated. It wasn't just the assault itself that caused her pain, but the betrayal and violation of her trust. In the days following, she seemed lost, unsure of herself, and struggling to make sense of what had happened to her. The trust she had in people was shaken, and the path she once saw before her became clouded by fear, shame, and confusion. Despite this, Ebby didn't keep her pain entirely to herself. She reached out to those she trusted. In the days following the assault, she opened up to her family, hoping to find some kind of support, some kind of resolution. But the darkness of what happened began to swallow her whole, and in the midst of it all, Ebby began to lose her sense of security, her sense of belonging. She became increasingly withdrawn and began struggling with the weight of her secret. And then, just days later, Ebby vanished. One minute she was there, full of life, full of promise, and the next she was gone. No one knew where she went, or why. Her sudden disappearance seemed to make no sense. It was as if the life she had was snatched away from her in the blink of an eye, leaving only a trail of unanswered questions and a family desperate for answers. Her car, found abandoned in Chalamont Park, left only more questions. Inside were her personal items, her phone, makeup, and contact lenses, everything indicating that Ebby had not left willingly. The mystery deepened, and the more her family searched, the more they felt the weight of their own helplessness. No one could understand why someone so full of potential would just vanish, leaving behind nothing but confusion and fear. What could have led to this moment? Could there be a connection between the assault and her disappearance? Was there someone trying to silence her? Or was this a tragic random event? The more time passed, the more the questions piled up, with each unanswered question making the tragedy all the more intense. Before we move on with the chilling details of Ebby's disappearance, I want to take a moment to thank all my amazing subscribers for your continued support. Your engagement means the world to me and helps my channel grow so I can bring you more stories like this. If you believe that Ebby's case deserves to be heard, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share the story with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep her memory alive. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I drop more stories like this one. Your support is truly invaluable. October 13th, 2015. It started as a typical night, but it would soon spiral into a mystery that would haunt the minds of many. On that fateful evening, Ebby Steppach called her brother Trevor. Her voice was strange, distorted, confused, almost unrecognizable. She told him that she thought she was outside his house, but something wasn't right. She couldn't seem to figure out where she truly was. It was as if the world around her was shifting, and her sense of reality was slipping away. Trevor, concerned, tried to make sense of her words, but what she said next would be the last he would ever hear from her. Ebby didn't make it to her brother's house that night. Instead, she vanished, leaving behind only questions. The call ended abruptly, and as hours passed, her family grew desperate. They had no idea where she was, no idea what had happened. Was she confused, lost, or was there something more sinister at play? What could have possibly led to her feeling this way? Just 2 days later, in a chilling turn of events, her car was found abandoned in Chalamont Park. The keys were still in the ignition, the engine still running, but Ebby was nowhere in sight. Her phone, her makeup, and her contact lenses. All of her personal belongings were left behind, just lying in the car, as if she had stepped out for a moment. The scene seemed surreal, like a riddle left for the world to solve. What had happened to her? Why would she leave her belongings behind like that? Why was her car left running with the keys still in the ignition? The unanswered questions seemed to multiply with each passing minute. It was as if Ebby had simply vanished into thin air, her disappearance leaving behind only an eerie emptiness. The scene suggested no signs of a struggle or forced entry. No sign that she had been taken or attacked. Everything was left in place, just as if she had walked away willingly. But could it have been that simple? Did she leave on her own, or had something or someone driven her to do so? The authorities responded swiftly. Search parties, including family members, combed the park and surrounding areas. But despite their best efforts, there was no sign of Ebby. No trace. No clues. Just her car, abandoned, a haunting image of her sudden, inexplicable disappearance. But the situation only deepened the mystery. Ebby's behavior in that last phone call. The confusion, the disorientation. Something wasn't right. What could have caused her to feel that way? Was she under duress? Or was there something else at play? Something that no one could have predicted? As the hours turned into days and the days into weeks, the case grew colder. The questions piled up. Where was Ebby? What happened to her that night? Why did she make that strange call to Trevor, telling him she was somewhere she couldn't identify? What did it all mean? How could Ebby have been so disoriented and confused during her last phone call? What do you think happened in those final moments before she disappeared? Was there someone involved that we don't know about yet? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read and reply to every comment. After Ebby's car was discovered in Chalamont Park, authorities launched a massive search. It was a full-scale operation. Cadaver dogs were brought in, officers scoured the park, and volunteers joined the search efforts. But no matter how many times the area was combed, nothing was found. It was as if Ebby had vanished without a trace. The scene left a chilling question. How could someone simply disappear? Her car was there, but there was no sign of her. No footprints. No traces of struggle. No nothing. Weeks turned into months, and the search continued, but as time passed, the investigation seemed to lose steam. The police, while initially promising, appeared to have run out of leads. Despite the resources at their disposal, Ebby's case seemed to be slipping through the cracks. Every time her family hoped for a breakthrough, they were met with silence. There were no more clues, no more evidence, only questions, and a haunting sense of dread. Her family, devastated by the lack of progress, began to question everything. Why wasn't more being done? Why were there no updates? Why wasn't the investigation moving faster? After all, this wasn't just a missing persons case. It was a case involving a young woman who had made serious allegations before she disappeared. Her stepfather and brother believed that there were far too many unanswered questions, and yet, no one seemed to be looking into the right places. The lack of progress in Ebby's case felt especially difficult for her family. They had to watch as time wore on, with no answers coming from the authorities. The frustration was palpable. Ebby had been missing for weeks, and it seemed as though no one knew where to look. The search efforts felt disjointed, as if no one truly understood the gravity of the situation. Had they missed something in their search? Were they looking in the wrong places? Or was it possible that someone was deliberately trying to keep Ebby's disappearance a secret? The feelings of helplessness grew stronger each day as the investigation stagnated. For her family, it was as if the walls were closing in. They could only watch as time passed, while the answers they so desperately needed remained just out of reach. Every day without answers felt like another day closer to losing hope. They knew Ebby wasn't just missing. Something had happened to her, something terrible. But what was it? Meanwhile, rumors started to swirl, creating even more confusion. Speculation about the initial investigation's handling grew louder. Did the police miss something? Was there foul play involved? Was it possible that Ebby's case had been mishandled from the start? The longer the investigation continued without answers, the more the questions piled up. Do you think the search efforts were handled properly from the beginning? Could they have done more to find Ebby sooner? What do you think could have changed the outcome of those early searches? Share your opinions in the comments. I read every one of your thoughts, and I'd love to hear from all over the world. Where are you watching from? May 2018 marked a turning point in the case of Ebby Steppach. Nearly 3 years after her mysterious disappearance, hope seemed to fade. Her family had waited in agony, their hearts heavy with unanswered questions. But then, a breakthrough came that no one saw coming, a discovery that would shake everyone to the core. A cold case detective, revisiting the scene of Ebby's disappearance, decided to look at the evidence with fresh eyes. Using new technology, a remote-controlled camera was sent into a drainage pipe near where Ebby's car had been found in 2015. The search had already been conducted several times in that same area. Cadaver dogs had scoured the park, and investigators had combed through every inch of the surroundings. Yet, Ebby's body had eluded detection every single time. But this time, the detective's search was different, and it would uncover something chilling. Ebby's skeletal remains, only about 60 feet away from where her car had been abandoned. The discovery was both a relief and a shock. Ebby had been so close to where her car was found, just yards away, but somehow no one had seen her. How could this have happened? How had she been missed in every search, even after cadaver dogs had been used? Why had no one thought to check the drainage pipe before? The discovery seemed almost too bizarre to believe. The fact that Ebby's remains had been hidden in plain sight for so long was unfathomable. The location where her body was found had been searched multiple times, and yet it was only now that the truth came to light. What went wrong? Was it simply a mistake, a failure to look closely enough? Or was there something more sinister at play? Something hidden in the investigation itself? The fact that her body had been overlooked for so long raised more questions than answers. Why had the police missed this vital lead in the first place? Could it have been that investigators failed to take the case as seriously as they should have? Were there other factors involved that hindered the investigation? The area where her remains were found seemed so close, almost as if she had been hidden in plain sight. How could Ebby have been so near to the searchers and yet remain undiscovered? What was it about that drainage pipe that kept it from being checked in the initial searches? There are no easy answers. But one thing was clear: Ebby's body had been found, and that meant the search for justice had to continue. Her family's pain was far from over. The discovery of her remains may have solved one mystery, but it opened up even more questions that needed to be answered. What happened to Ebby that night? How had she ended up in that drainage pipe? The haunting truth of Ebby's last moments was still hidden. While the case had taken a significant step forward with this discovery, the investigation was far from over. Who was responsible for her death? What led to her being abandoned there, so close to where her car had been found? The answers remained elusive, even as the truth slowly started to surface. How could Ebby's remains have been missed during all the previous searches? Why was she found only years later, just yards from where her car was left? What do you think about the delay in finding her? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I respond to every comment. Even though Ebby's remains were discovered in May 2018, the questions surrounding her case did not fade. In fact, they deepened. No arrests had been made, and the investigation was still shrouded in mystery. Despite the discovery of her body, the truth about what had happened to Ebby remained elusive. The family, the community, and everyone who had followed the case were left with more questions than answers. One of the most chilling aspects of the case was what Ebby had shared before her disappearance. Days before she vanished, she confided in her stepfather, revealing that she had been sexually assaulted at a party. She claimed there was video evidence of the assault, a disturbing revelation that changed the course of the investigation. It was a secret that weighed heavily on her, and after that, she had no idea how things would unfold. She had just taken a step forward in trying to find justice for herself when she disappeared. Was her disappearance linked to her attempt to expose the assault? Her family was left to wonder if the assault and her disappearance were tied together. Had someone tried to silence her? Had her attempt to bring attention to the assault made her a target? Or was her death merely a tragic coincidence? These questions haunted Ebby's family, who were now forced to deal with the possibility that someone had known about her efforts to expose the truth and had taken drastic measures to prevent it. What makes the case even more unsettling is the fact that Ebby's remains were found so close to where her car had been abandoned. The drainage pipe, a place that had been searched multiple times, held the answer all along, yet no one found her. Was it really just a failure to search properly? Or was there more at play here? Could the fact that she was so close to the original crime scene be a sign that the investigation had been mishandled from the very start? The delay in finding Ebby's remains raised even more suspicions. Why wasn't the area searched more thoroughly in the beginning? How could someone's body be overlooked so many times, even with cadaver dogs and investigators scouring the area? The feeling of frustration only grew as new questions came to light. Could her body have been deliberately hidden in such a way that it was missed in the initial searches? But the unanswered questions didn't stop there. After all this time, with no suspects or arrests, one has to wonder, why was Ebby's case treated with such indifference in the early stages? Could the handling of the investigation have been influenced by factors other than the search for the truth? Was there a cover-up? Or was this a case of sheer incompetence? Adding to the complexity, there were whispers in the community. Rumors that some of those closest to the case had connections to powerful people. Some wondered if these connections could have influenced the course of the investigation. Could Ebby's assault and disappearance have been part of something larger? Was there a deliberate attempt to bury the truth? For the family and friends who knew Ebby, the pain of her loss had been compounded by the unanswered questions. Not only had they lost someone they loved, but they were now left with a mystery that refused to be solved. The fact that she had tried to speak out about the assault only added weight to the suspicion surrounding her death. The uncertainty in this case left everyone who followed it feeling unsettled. What really happened to Ebby Steppach that night? Who was responsible for her disappearance and ultimately her death? The pieces of the puzzle seemed to be scattered, and no matter how much time passed, the answers remained just out of reach. Could Ebby's disappearance and death really be linked to her claims of assault? How much do you think those allegations play a role in this mystery? What are your thoughts on the investigation and its handling? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read and reply to every comment. Over the years, the mystery surrounding Ebby Steppach's disappearance has sparked countless theories, each one more chilling than the last, each one a piece of a puzzle that seems impossible to solve. As time has gone on, it's become clear that no single theory can fully explain the tragic events that unfolded in October 2015. But could one of these theories hold the key to what really happened to Ebby? Some believe that Ebby's disappearance was not just the result of a random tragedy, but part of something far darker, something intentionally hidden from the public. A theory has circulated that her vanishing may have been a cover-up. Ebby had already confided in her stepfather and others about the assault she experienced, and there were even claims that she had evidence, a video, that could expose the truth. Could someone have wanted to silence her before she had the chance to speak out? Was there someone who feared what would happen if Ebby's story came to light? The timing of her disappearance certainly fuels this speculation. Just days after revealing the assault, Ebby vanished, and she was never seen again. What if those closest to her had something to hide? Could it be that her knowledge and her intentions to expose what had happened made her a threat? Another theory that has surfaced suggests that Ebby's death was an act of revenge. Could the person who assaulted her, or those connected to them, have been responsible for her disappearance? The idea of silencing a victim to prevent them from telling their story is nothing new. History is filled with tragic tales of individuals who were harmed for trying to expose the truth. Could Ebby have been one of those victims? Was someone trying to stop her from ruining their lives by telling what happened to her? But then, there's the chilling question of how her body ended up so close to the place where her car was found. The drainage pipe, just 60 feet away from her abandoned vehicle, was searched multiple times. How was it that investigators missed this critical clue, especially considering the extent of the search efforts? The question that continues to linger is, why wasn't the area thoroughly examined in the early stages of the investigation? Why didn't cadaver dogs detect her body when they had already scoured the park? Could it be that someone deliberately placed her body there, ensuring it would be found only years later, after many had stopped looking? The fact that it was missed during earlier searches raises even more suspicions. Was this a failure on the part of law enforcement, or was there something more sinister at play? Perhaps an attempt to make it look like Ebby was simply forgotten in a corner of the park, as if she had vanished without a trace? The slow pace of the investigation and the failure to follow leads quickly enough have fueled a growing sense of mistrust in the community. Could there have been incompetence, or was there something more deliberate happening behind the scenes? Were critical leads ignored, and were vital pieces of evidence overlooked because of who was involved in the case? These are questions that remain unanswered, adding layers of complexity to an already tragic story. And then there's the question that still haunts everyone who's been following this case. Was Ebby's murder the result of one person's actions, or was it part of something much bigger? Could someone be protecting the truth, keeping it buried where no one could find it? What if Ebby wasn't just a random victim of circumstance, but someone targeted to prevent her from revealing something that could destroy someone else's life? What do you think happened in those final days before Ebby's disappearance? Was someone trying to silence her? Could the authorities have overlooked something critical? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I read all of your comments and love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Despite the devastating discovery of Ebby's remains, justice has remained elusive. For her family, the painful journey doesn't end with the finding of her body. No, the real battle begins after the remains are uncovered. For nearly 3 years, they waited for the truth to come to light, clinging to the hope that their daughter, their sister, their loved one would not be just another name added to the list of unsolved mysteries. But even with her body finally found, the unanswered questions about Ebby's death remain. The discovery of her skeletal remains in the drainage pipe was supposed to provide some semblance of closure. Yet it only deepened the mystery. How had this area been overlooked during the previous searches? Why was it that no one had found her, despite combing through the park countless times? These are questions that continue to linger, questions that demand answers. But there's one thing that's certain: Ebby's family hasn't given up. They've continued to push for answers, to make sure that Ebby's story doesn't fade into obscurity. Her mother, stepfather, and siblings have been relentless in their pursuit of justice. They've spoken out at every opportunity, making sure the public knows that Ebby's case is far from closed. They've raised a $50,000 reward for information that could lead to a breakthrough, hoping that someone, somewhere, holds the key to solving this heartbreaking case. In addition to their tireless efforts on social media, interviews, and public appearances, the Steppach family took their fight for justice to national platforms, including the Dr. Phil Show, where they continued to raise awareness about Ebby's case. Their efforts have kept the case in the public eye, but despite all their work, no arrests have been made. The police investigation has continued, but many still question whether enough is being done to find the truth. Ebby's case is an unfortunate example of how some crimes go unsolved for years. How a young woman who had her whole life ahead of her can vanish without a trace, only to be discovered years later in an area that had already been searched. It's a painful reminder of the frustrations families face when law enforcement fails to act swiftly, when leads are overlooked, and when the truth is buried in the shadows. And the public outcry doesn't stop there. Many people believe there's more to Ebby's death than meets the eye. The fact that her car was abandoned with all her personal belongings inside raised suspicions that foul play was involved from the very start. The questions about the delays in finding her body, about the mishandling of evidence, and about the possible cover-up theories still haunt her family and the public. Was Ebby simply another victim of a crime that was overlooked and under-investigated, or was there something far more sinister at play? The case has also drawn attention to the issue of sexual assault and how victims' voices can sometimes be ignored, mishandled, or silenced. Ebby had confided in those closest to her about what had happened to her, revealing a painful truth that could have led to justice for her. But instead, it seems her voice was drowned out by the silence that followed her disappearance. The lack of urgency in the investigation, the slow response in connecting the dots, and the delay in finding her body only fueled the suspicion that her case wasn't being treated with the seriousness it deserved. As the years pass, the Steppach family remains dedicated to finding answers, keeping the search for justice alive. They're determined to ensure that Ebby's case isn't forgotten, that her story doesn't fade into the background like so many others. They continue to fight for justice, despite the roadblocks, despite the delays, despite the frustration of not knowing what happened that fateful night. But the real question remains: will they ever get the answers they deserve? Will Ebby's killer ever be brought to justice? Or will this case remain another haunting mystery that goes unsolved? The answers, for now, remain out of reach. As we reflect on Ebby's ongoing fight for justice, I want to thank every one of you for your incredible support in helping us keep her story alive. It takes time and effort to bring these cases to light, and your involvement makes all the difference. If you believe justice should be served, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes in fighting for what's right. Let's keep pushing for answers. Hit that notification bell so you'll never miss another story. Together, we can make sure Ebby's case isn't forgotten.